how well do you think it's in Absa's case integrated the two strategies in one? And also, how much of that is that the sustainability part is a business opportunity? Do you believe it's a significant business opportunity or not? And how much that helps you to run it all in one process?
Mm. Yeah, I think maybe a good place to start, Fernando, is just to remind ourselves, firstly, that strategy is all about betting about an uncertain future, more than anything else. And so, if you have that as you're going in position, then it almost sets you on a platform where you understand it isn't going to be easy, and also it's not going to be a quick fix. So those are some of the foundational elements that are critical. But you have to then make sure that you put in consistent effort, from a realization point of view. So in terms of integrating it into the business, to Nola's point, you've got to have a full appreciation of your business model. And then if you fully understand your business model, then you can be able to start saying, so here are the pressure points and the areas and levers that I need to pull, to effectively embed it into the organization. And then in terms of opportunities, I actually think there's lots of business opportunities, and how we think about those in particular. I think from a banking perspective, you may have heard a lot of the banks, for example, they go out with targets on sustainability. So on our side, I mean, we've got this 100 billion sustainable financing target that we are driving. And fortuitously, when load shedding happened, it created an opportunity for the banks to maximize, I think, value through green funding, opportunities. So as people then demand for renewable energies started to increase, on our side, I mean, we expanded this funding that we had set aside, I think, for green programs, to a point that if I look at our organization, we set this 100 billion target in 2020. And, as I said, we're betting on an uncertain future. And we actually thought, by 2025, end of the year, we'll only achieve the target then. And when you look now, we've actually achieved, that target materially. So I think by the end of this year, we would have fully achieved it. So to that extent, it shows you the extent of the opportunities that are available out there. But how these opportunities manifest, particularly in banking sector, because a lot of the funding that we expend, is monies that we get from shareholders, and we've got to be able to provide the right level of returns. However, if the government creates the right framework and put processes in place that become a lot more enabling, then you find that the demand from clients start to increase, and then on the back of increasing demand, then us as banks, then we can help to fulfill and support clients' demands. So opportunities, I would say, they are abound, and it's not just from a green energy perspective. So for us as banks, it's also important that we keep our costs as low as we possibly can. And funding cost is one of our biggest costs, which is the cost of money, because we also have to, buy the money and, pay the people that are advancing the money to us. So because funding cost is such an important lever, what you tend to find is a lot of countries, in particular, especially Europe, if you look at them, they've got processes in place, that if you fulfill the criterion that they want from their side, then they can advance capital as well as funding at cheaper costs. But obviously, there's criteria that you have to meet, as a business, to ensure that you can, provide that funding in the right way. A lot of people talk about, the issues of, greenwashing. So you have to make sure that you've got processes in place that help you to not fall foul of greenwashing. And then on the back of that, you can get funding at a cheaper cost. So that becomes an incentive, I think, in its own right, in terms of then the kind of opportunities that you can create. And then also, I think there's lots of funding that comes from philanthropic organizations such as the Jeff Bezos Foundation. So those foundations, when they provide that kind of funding, they normally provide it at reasonable cost. And if you align, I think, your processes to their requirements, then you can reduce the cost. So for us, it's more about, how do we get to a point, I think, of, being a lot more efficient as an organization. And so that becomes an attraction point, the incentives, that you can get to reduce your cost of funds. So opportunities, I think, for banks, they manifest in that way, but also at the same time is, I think, when you look at, the more green funding, we advance, we also protecting some of the assets that we are securing. So like your home, for example, we've got, homeowners insurance. So if the weather patterns are going to improve over time, the cost of claims will come down for us. And, managing things like the claims ratio becomes very important for us. So then, you start to see the business case in that way. So I would say for banks, I mean, there's really lots of areas that I can cover to demonstrate, the opportunities and how we can run, an efficient organization. I think you spoke a little bit earlier on about the importance of digitization. Yes, while digitization, I think, is a lever, to pull in order to reduce the costs. At the same time, with the elevated use of artificial intelligence, it's also bringing its own nuances just around, the extent to which we use, the power, across, I think, the globe. So then it becomes important for us to reduce the cost of, power from our side. And so there's lots of, I think, things that you can really pinpoint, from a business case point of view and from an opportunities point of view. And that opportunity manifests not just in the revenue or your ability to generate revenue, it's also your ability to reduce costs, and run a more cost-effective, organization. So it comes back to, how well do you understand your business model? Because if you understand it well, then you can be able to find opportunities to create value around your business model. And then your strategy will realize on the back of that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nola, I found it interesting. You said before, one of the first things they asked you was to come up with a sustainability strategy. Maybe one of the first times you said no. So I read from that, you think that we should not have a separate process for that. So how well would you say it's integrated in Vodacom, and how much of that is because it is also a business opportunity?
So I think we're getting there. We've still got a long way to go, but definitely. And I think in terms of, speaking, as I said, first thing I did was really just understand the business model, understand the strategy, and then start to actually say, where does ESG show up in the strategy? So to me, that should be any starting point. It's not to say that's where it starts and ends, but then at least you have a baseline, and then you can layer on and you can start to say, okay, but we're not doing too well in this. How do we enhance that? So I think the first thing was about creating that shared vision, in terms of kind of winning the hearts and soul to say, listen, we're not here to take you in a different direction. We're actually here just to help you achieve your goals even better. In terms of the opportunities, it is something where, surprisingly enough, we're not just one of these companies. We have a whole lot of tech behind IoT solutions. And one of the key things Shamil always says to everybody in any conversation, he'll always go, guys, how are we meeting a need? So whether it be go and understand, and every OPCO and the CEO of every OPCO must start with understanding what the government's strategic priorities are and how through our business model we can help them achieve that priority. So as an example, the Egyptian government has set out to fully digitize their healthcare system. So then how can we help them meet that objective? So whether it be saying, right, we're going to provide you the connectivity, but we're also going to provide you with the IoT, we're going to provide you with the platforms, we're going to provide you with the way to measure the data. And at this stage, we've reached over 6 million people and digitized over 300 hospitals, and we're going into phase 2. Shamil, ever the opportunist, because he wants to know, he goes, oh, but NHI is coming. Sito, speak to Kimo. Please see how we can learn from Egypt and understand what we can do to help the South African government in terms of delivering NHI. So it really is, I think, in terms of that, going and understanding what the need is, as sustainability and ESG is becoming more important, our commercial customers, what are they? Are they looking for efficiencies? Joburg, we all, and I read a very dismal post earlier about social unrest brewing because of water shortages, etc. We have the most incredible IoT solution that goes from everything from tracking data, water quality. We were actually involved in tracking the outbreak of, I forget what it was, in Limpopo. Sorry, can't remember which one it was. It was our tech that actually helped government to understand it. Our tech helped government implement the vaccination solution. Through our tech, we were able to manage the appointments. When you booked your COVID appointment, that was our tech in terms of doing that. So it's really about saying, what is the societal need? What is the business need? And then figure out a way to make it work. Then there's the element of the operations. So net zero, I have to tell you, for my first 18 months was a super dirty word. It's impossible. We work in Africa. It's never going to happen, etc., etc. But using that sponsorship that I spoke about, we said, Shamil, this is your responsibility. We need you to open doors. We need you to kind of make things happen. So the first thing he said to the teams is reimagine the problem, please. Stop trying to go to each base station to find a solution. So that is where the birth of virtual wheeling came up. So one of our subsidiaries, Mezzanine, has come up with a platform. We are contracting with independent power producers who will pump electricity straight into the Eskom grid, helping in terms of power needs. And then there is almost like a trial balance that happens in the background. Okay, we've put in so much renewable energy, we've consumed so much. Where are we at? This platform is now being used by other South African companies, large retailers who have now said, okay, we want to get onto this because we too can play a role in the solution of power in South Africa. And then second of all, it helps them transition. So really it's around thinking differently. It's around going back to the need. Who's the person? What is their pain points? How can we solve that? And being creative. I think technology, there is the negatives, don't get me wrong. We won't start on the whole Gen AI and the energy consumption of that and what the issues are. But how can technology, in terms of the SDGs, leave no one behind?
Thank you. So, Rightwell, you mentioned before that in your case, it's already very clearly integrated sustainability with the business strategy. But I'm assuming that is also a business opportunity in your case very clearly, right?
Yes, I think whilst I said it's already integrated, it is a continuous process of making sure that integration and the balance, as I said, between the three strategic themes is there in terms of people, planet, and profit. We do recognize that there will be the economic side of things, but also the societal side of things. So we have what we call Sasol in the society and Sasol in the economy, and we're quite proud of contributing 5% to the GDP of the country in South Africa, which is
Wow.
which is quite significant. and we want to do more in terms of that. And when it comes to business opportunity, I think we have recognized that partnerships are going to play a key role in terms of our transformation. So we already are busy with renewables, solar, wind, and we work with different partners, including government and government entities. So business-wise, there are opportunities. And secondly, the technology that we have, our Fisher Trough technology, which is quite unique, is something that gives us a competitive advantage. And one big business opportunity is in the sustainable aviation fuel side of things. And we are already very much involved in that opportunity and making sure that our technology gives us that exposure to building new value pools for our company going forward.
I'm smiling because maybe you found a competitor today here with Nick. Do you want to tell us about this ESG lottery? And I mean, you mentioned already some of these things, but anything else in terms of how well is integrated in your case, and what's the business opportunities that this has?
I think sustainability for us isn't a business opportunity, it's a diversification strategy. So what we're looking at is we're currently the country's biggest electricity user. That power comes from Eskom through EEC to us. And it's coal-based power, so we're not very keen on coal-based power. And ultimately, we're not convinced that Eskom's that sustainable in the long term. So we need a way forward. So we're looking at going off-grid ourselves. A lot of our kit is old. One of our factories was built in 1955, the other one in 1978, which is a bit newer. So we're taking this opportunity to look at becoming self-sufficient, so going off the grid and generating all of our own power ourselves. But in looking at that, we're looking at, okay, we've got 2 mills, can we go to 1 mill to consolidate everything down? And then we're looking, okay, so if we're going to put all this kit in to become self-sufficient, for a little bit more capital, we can export power back to the grid. So we're looking at generating probably 50 megawatts or so for ourselves, and then putting 50 megawatts back into the grid. Doesn't sound like much in the South African context, but in Eswatini, base load grid in Eswatini is 120 megawatts. So we'll be putting 50 megawatts out of 120 back into the grid. And we'll be looking to do that by biomass, which is our cane. Currently, we burn it to make it easier to cut. In the future, we will be bringing it green. We will get the community to grow biomass. We'd look to buy biomass from the forestry companies as well. But then we're also putting in solar, and we're also going to be putting in wind. Then we'll be blending all the different energy streams together and putting it across the fence and selling it back to government. The challenge for us is that our plants are off from December through till April. So we need to either store up biomass for that period or manage it through that thing. So that's a challenge for us, but it's a huge opportunity. So that's a big one for us. The sugar process is cane comes to the factories, we make sugar molasses, the sugar gets sold, the molasses, we buy it back, and we ferment it into ethanol. Typically, we've done potable ethanol. You may have enjoyed some of our ethanol.
In the bush.
It's very good ethanol. But we've moved along now, so we've upgraded. Now we can produce fuel-grade ethanol, so we can easily provide ethanol for a 10% blend into petrol that you wouldn't even notice in your vehicle. We're also looking at, we're getting into retail ethanol, so we're looking at next year, soon you'll see our rum on the shelves, hopefully. We're also looking at renewable jet fuel. That'll be where we'll face off over the table, not be so friendly. Maybe in the future we'll see. But then the other thing, because what's great about sustainability is that the final product of the distillery is called CMS, concentrated molasses stillage. It's a horrible, ugly effluent that is very high, hugely high in COD and BOD, but it has 4% potassium in it, so it's a great fertilizer. So we recycle it back into the fields as fertilizer. So there's virtually no waste that comes out from a sugar mill. Every single thing gets used or recirculated back in. So at the moment, we're probably 85% sugar, 15% ethanol in our business in terms of revenue and profit. In the next 5 years, I want it to be 1/3 sugar, 1/3 ethanol, 1/3 power. That's how I see us going forwards over the next 5 years. We are top 10 lowest cost producers in the world of sugar. So in the unlikely event, like when you're in an aircraft, in the unlikely event that sugar becomes undesirable, which is highly unlikely, because it's such a good product as long as you don't eat too much of it, and it certainly does not make you fat. But in the unlikely event that were ever to happen, then because we're such a low-cost producer of sugar, that becomes then a substrate into something else. So we're looking at our long-term possibility at putting sugar into polylactic acid, into bioplastics. And from there, you can do all sorts of things with bioplastics. So that's our long-term strategy. It's a bit blue sky thinking at the moment, because I think that we certainly know that, yeah, CAPEX is big, but Africa is a net importer of sugar. It imports 8 million tons of sugar, and it has the fastest growing population. So you love sugar, you eat it, we're in the right space. So I don't see it being so much of a problem, but that's why it'll be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Okay.
So that's our sustainability strategy going forward.
Thank you.